wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I want you to think back 10 to 15 years ago to a place and a time where you learned something that was taught to you, something that you probably or might still do today. And I'm going to share with you real fast something that I was taught in this very yard. Growing up in this yard, this was my grandparents' home. So 10 to 15 years ago, I was just a little guy running around playing in the yard. I would come over on Saturdays and help my grandfather with the yard and clean up and do chores. And when I was out this weekend, I started thinking about some of the topics that we're going through in the fitness industry currently. And currently we're starting to look at this idea of global movement. And through global movement, looking at a reductionist point of view versus a longitudinal view of the body through functional anatomy. And so what I really started to think about is, growing up in this yard, I learned certain skills. I learned certain routines that I would go through, certain ways of doing things, which my grandfather instilled in me. And as I came out this weekend and started getting into some yard work, I had some thoughts about just kind of reminiscing and going back 10 to 15 years ago of how he would have me do certain things and certain ways that he would go about instructing me, teaching me how to handle certain chores in the yard. And it was funny because a lot of the same things that I recall him instructing me on, I still did and I still do to this day, but you could say that they're a little bit enhanced. I've thrown in my own things to, I guess, without him knowing, make them better. And so when I started thinking about that, I really started realizing that this new concept of global movement and this new concept of longitudinal anatomy versus a reductionist point of view, we're having a lot of arguments right now about what is right or wrong. And there's really no right or wrong. What we've done is we've taken an older skill set, enhanced it with a new understanding of the body, and have come together with a really unbelievable collaboration of science. And so now we understand, as fitness professionals going forward, looking at the human body in a different light. And what that's going to do is allow us as fitness professionals to really understand how our clients are coming in, how are they moving from a physical standpoint, how are they moving from a mental, emotional, and also a lifestyle standpoint. And we'll come to find that all of those correlate through these myofascial meridians that we've come to know through Thomas Myers and his group, and also through the practical part of it with our clients in the fitness industry through PTA Global. And so what we have the ability to do now is really understand how we can take this old method or this old skill set, this old mindset of a reductionist look at the body, this new understanding of global movement and longitudinal anatomy through functional anatomy, and combine them to get something that has enhanced us and something that has made us more efficient as fitness professionals that we can continue to learn on. Whenever we start to look at that new skill set, we'll start to understand a little bit more about the body's ability off of old learnings. So if we were to look at even load to unload, the same skill set, the same load to unload that we knew of in a reductionist view, taking that and looking at a practical application with clients still exist. So when we look at fascial tracts now and bony stations, instead of looking at insertion points, origin to insertion, they're still there, different names, but we'll look at the reaction and the interpretation of that throughout the entire body, longitudinally. As we'll start to look at that a little closer, we start to really see that the body is made up of these fascial lines that keep us held together. It's a webbing matrix that give us a web and a flow to how we move. And so anytime that we start looking at fascial tracts, we still have that upregulation, we still have that load to unload. So the best analogy that I can give as far as unload or load to unload is I always refer back to my sister. My sister's a year younger than I am, and grew up pretty close to each other, and of course always playing and always roughhousing. And my most favorite thing that I think I could do to my sister was surprise her with a nice pop from a rubber band. And so it was always a sneak attack. It was always something that she never did see coming. And she could be 10 to 15 feet away from me. So if you could imagine a sibling or a friend or a loved one even that you would like to surprise, and you had them standing 10 to 15 feet away from you, take a rubber band in your hand and just imagine this, if you will, and we're going to want to pop them or surprise them, give them that stimulus from that rubber band. If I want to reach my sister that's 10 to 15 feet away, I'm going to have to first pull that rubber band back with it stationary to my finger. When I pull that rubber band back, I'm uploading or upregulating potential energy to be used as I release the rubber band, which is going to cause a reaction and an unloading process for that rubber band to leave. So as I start to do that, as I start to pull that rubber band back, I load potential energy. If I really want to get her good, I can pull a little bit further back and I can let go and it'll reach. That would be an uploading, and then I'll have the unloading to allow that desired reaction from my sister, of course, whenever she gets popped. Now, if I'm loading that rubber band with that energy and I only pull a quarter of the way, or let's say even halfway, I might not have the same ability for that rubber band to actually reach her. So we can see the same relationship through fascia, through myofascia. If I'm taking fascial tracts and I'm loading them through a lengthening process, I'm giving potential energy to that fascial tract in order for it to be unloaded. And our body is energy conduit. It's an energy conduit, meaning that it loves energy, it wants energy, and it wants to disperse that energy. When we start to look at further into tensegrity and into the body's actual structure, we see that the body has an amazing ability to receive energy and to dissipate that energy across fascial lines. That's what it's built to do. So when we start to look at the relationship of now fascia and its load to unload ability, that loading is actually loading of potential energy through a lengthening process and then an unloading of potential energy to receive action. So I'm out and I actually have this enormous pine tree behind me that I'm about to cut down over probably about 2 weekends. And what I'd like to demonstrate is actually this load to unload, and just to let just to let us see fascial lines. So if I'm loading in energy and I'm going to be wanting to have an effect, of course, to chop down the tree, what I'm going to need to do is lengthen myofascia across my body. I'm going to have some line of pull, which is going to be directed from the axe. I'm going to have some type of vector entering into the body, and I'm going to have an unload to have a reaction to it. So if I was going to just look at functional line, looking at contralateral sides, of course we have all of the other lines, spiral, we have lateral, we have everything holding me in. But if I just want to get a good chop on the tree here, what I'll look at now, just looking at functional, is the functional line, is the actual loading. So I'm lengthening out, just as that rubber band would be lengthened out for me to pop my sister, and then an unload to have a reaction. So if we were to go through, and I started loading to unload, load, unload, load, unload, load, unload, load, unload, load, unload. And we'll see, if I can come over to the other side, the same reaction can happen. So anything that I want to start doing to load the body, the load fascial tract, and unload can start to have an effect on the body and give me that energy that the body craves so much in order to perform desired motor pattern. So when we start to look at these fascial lines deeper, we'll start to look at the superficial front line. We'll start to look at the superficial back. We'll look at lateral lines. We'll look at front functional lines, which go to, just as I gave you an example of, contralateral sides. We'll look at spiral lines and also arm lines. And all of these lines receive load through a lengthening of fascia and unload energy through a shortening of fascia. As we start to look into these lines a little bit deeper, we'll have certain postural functions. We'll have certain movement function that these lines actually enable us to do. So I would encourage you to go to PTAglobal.com